Hi, my name is Hilma Volk, and I've been a licensed massage therapist since 1991. And one of my passions in recent years is helping people to help themselves to treat their own carpal tunnel or other things that resemble carpal tunnel or things that even aren't carpal tunnel at all but give problems to the hands if it's due to their occupation or hobbies. And there are various degrees of these problems. Maybe you have tingling in your hands once in a while. Maybe numbness in your fingers comes and goes. You think it's just one of those things. Or maybe it's gotten more severe where you're fumbling with buttons. You've modified your lifestyle so you're not using your dominant hand as much or your injured hand as much. You're using everything with your other hand, or you're using your shoulder or elbow to open doors when you otherwise would have used your hand. Maybe you've given up playing the guitar or reduced the amount of time you play your musical instrument like piano, or maybe you've given up knitting or gardening or playing sports because it's just too painful, or you have numbness that wakes you up at night. Maybe it comes and goes. Maybe it's only certain activities like riding a bicycle or when you're driving a car, and then at other times it goes away. If you don't do something about your problem, it's just going to get worse. But before we get into that, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I started massage school in Eugene, Oregon back in 1990. And the first day of massage school, I learned that carpal tunnel syndrome was a hazard to massage therapists. I didn't even know what carpal tunnel syndrome was, and obviously it's a hazard to a lot of occupations. Whether you're a hairdresser, carpenter, you use a computer, you're a court reporter, you're a meat packer, many occupations have that problem. I became a student of carpal tunnel after I became a massage therapist because I wanted to prevent it for myself. And I read lots of books, lots of articles, been all over the internet. And a lot of the books and stuff were not that helpful, really. They gave a lot of statistics, and they gave a lot of things of how to use a computer properly so you're not hurting yourself, which is very good. Ergonomics, which is, how to use equipment so it's not hurting yourself, is a very good thing to learn. But it really didn't give me a lot of help in knowing what to do about carpal tunnel if you get it. But later on, I was working at a resort, a spa at a resort, and I was working rather long hours. And my fingers were getting numb. And the stretches that I learned in massage school not only weren't helping me, or maybe I just wasn't persistent with them, but they actually seemed to make things worse. So I was using ice on my forearms because I know that the forearm muscles move the wrist and fingers. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that. But I'd come home and I'd stick my arms in a bucket of ice water and move from there to a bucket of warm water and transfer back. I was doing that every night. And I thought, there's got to be a better way. So I stumbled onto this one article on the internet. It was not written by a health professional. It was written by an athlete of a particular sport. And he showed or told about a method that their team was using to get rid of the numbness in their hands. And that article became the basis of me finding self-help tricks to use on myself. And they got rid of the numbness in my hands right away. And that's a video, another video, but I'll show you where to get that video at the end. But that was the basis of me starting my techniques for self-help for carpal tunnel. But then I started having another problem. See, in massage therapy, I'm working with my arms down all the time. But occasionally I would have to do reflexology, and that's sitting in a chair working on people's feet with your arms up. And immediately almost, I would get numbness in my fingers. Usually would start with these two fingers and then spread itself to the whole hand. And I'd be working on people's feet. I still had function in my fingers, but I had numbness, so they were just starting to feel dead after a while. But as soon as I stopped, the numbness would go away. And so I'd do my technique more and more and more in my hands, and it didn't make any difference. until an instructor I took in another course was showing people how to work on a muscle called the pectoralis minor. And this instructor in passing just mentioned, oh, you can get a false carpal tunnel from tight pectoralis minor muscles. Really? So I developed my own technique to work on myself. And voila, almost instantly, I got rid of that problem. So I could work with my hands up and not have numbness anymore. It was totally amazing. Well, let me explain briefly what carpal tunnel syndrome is, because it's often misunderstood. The carpal tunnel is a ditch made up of wrist bones, which are called carpal bones, and there's a strap across here, which is a hard strap, called the carpal tunnel ligament. And through there goes 9 tendons. They're flexor tendons, which flex means do this, and the median nerve. And the median nerve supplies the nerves to the thumb, this finger, and half of the ring finger. Now, a doctor will tell you that carpal tunnel syndrome is a nerve entrapment problem, which it is, but they don't tell you why it is, or they often don't think about why it is. They just go treat the symptoms. The symptoms are, there's a nerve entrapment in there. But why? Okay, when you use your hands, most people are using their hands closing them. That uses the flexor muscles. Now, most people don't know that most of the movement of the fingers, particularly, this type of motion, is coming from your forearm. You can tell that by squeezing your forearm muscles and just opening and closing your fingers and whatnot. When you squeeze them, you'll feel it there. And you see these long pencil-like things in the front of your forearm right there. Those are tendon sheaths. And the muscles in the forearm have to attach to the fingers somehow, and tendons connect muscles to bone. So in the case of these particular tendons, they're really long and skinny, where many other places they're very short. But these pencil-like things are actually hollow tubes. Think of it as a bicycle cable, where it's a hollow tube, and in the middle is your tendon, and there's liquid in there that helps lubricate it. Now, if you overuse it, that liquid's going to dry out, causing irritation. And the irritation can make those tendons swell up, causing less room in there. Also, because you're using these muscles that close the hand more than the ones that open them, these muscles get relatively tighter than the muscles in the back. That shortens the muscles, that shortens the tendons. Just in a nutshell here, that causes the carpal tunnel to be closed instead of open, and that causes more irritation on the tendons. And if you're working with your hands in a non-neutral position, this is neutral, but if you're working with your hands in different ways, that makes the tendons go around corners, and it irritates them. They swell up because they're shortened, various reasons. Now, old school doctors will prescribe anti-inflammatory drugs, or you may be taking them yourself, whether it's ibuprofen or Tylenol or whatever. I'm not talking about the side effects. I'm just talking about the fact that these drugs, first of all, don't cure carpal tunnel. They never have. They never will. They mask the symptoms, but the most important thing is they will make your problem worse in the long run. In the short run, the inflammation goes down, you feel better, but what's happening is, okay, your tendons inside the sheaths, they're irritated. Pieces of cell are sloughing off. Cells die in there naturally. Well, what happens is, naturally, you have systems in your body to clean those out. If you're taking drugs, it's like turning off the engine warning light. Your system doesn't know that there's a problem there, and so these things can accumulate inside those little narrow tendons and cause you major problems in the long run. Don't do it. There's a much safer way. As I told you, when I was having problems, I was icing my hands. Ice is a natural anti-inflammatory. Other things that doctors will do is prescribe night splints, which can be helpful. What they do is they keep the carpal tunnel open at night so that your hands are not flopping around, because anytime your arms or hands are not in neutral position, that makes the carpal tunnel have less room in it, and then you wake up with numb hands and whatnot. So having those splints on at night can make you sleep better, but it's not improving your condition. You've still got the problem. And there are some doctors, fortunately very few, that actually put casts on people, which is a big mistake, because casts are for broken bones. They're not for soft tissue. You need circulation for healing. You need that blood supply in there. And it's not just the heart that moves the blood. It's actually movement of muscles will move the blood through the muscles as well. And the next thing that surgeons do is they're following the symptoms. They'll put cortisone in there. And cortisone is a very powerful anti-inflammatory, but it's also quite dangerous. And one shot, fine, it's a quick fix, but it doesn't last. It may go away after 2 months, maybe after 2 years, but the problem goes away. I mean, the solution goes away, and most doctors won't prescribe cortisone in the same area more than once or twice, because it can deteriorate the tissue, it can deteriorate the tendon, it can deteriorate bone even. It's very powerful and very dangerous, and it's a quick fix. You're following the symptoms, not the cause. You have to get at the cause to have a permanent solution. Otherwise, you're just doing quick fixes. And the other thing they'll do is carpal tunnel syndrome, which is the most unnecessary procedure unless you've let it go so bad that your hands are mostly dead all the time. What they do is they slice this carpal tunnel ligament to provide more room in there. And that usually gives relief of the symptoms, but the problem is there's a high failure rate with carpal tunnel syndrome surgery. In about 1/3 of the cases, everything is beautiful, everything works out fine, and everybody's happy. In about 1/3 of the cases, though, because you have this ligament there to provide leverage for your fingers, your hands become weaker, or not having the same function as they did before. And in 1/3 of the cases, it's a total failure. It can be a failure for several reasons. There could be a mistake in the surgery. There's always a risk, that they'll cut something that they're not supposed to cut, or there's an infection, or the more common one is it was never carpal tunnel to begin with. It could be a false carpal tunnel, and nerve conductivity tests are not entirely accurate. What you need to do is go to carpaltunnelmaster.com, and on that page on the right side, just a little ways down, there's a form to fill out. Basically, all it's asking for is your email address. That's all, nothing else, just your email address. And you will get access to that video that taught me what these athletes were doing to relieve the numbness in their hand, which is the basis of the beginning of my self-help techniques. That video, not only that, but there's a 5-part video series that you'll get. So go to carpaltunnelmaster.com right now.